The sudden reemergence of measles has put the issue of vaccines on the table. Coming up momentarily, we'll meet a lady who was anti-vaccine. Why did she change her mind? What kind of community was she involved with that convinced her initially not to use vaccines? But first, let's catch up on details with this report.
Medical experts on Capitol Hill today didn't mince words.
Vaccines save lives.
Echoing the scientific and medical consensus that vaccinations are safe and there's no known link to autism.
To me, it's really a slam dunk what the decision should be.
The pace of measles cases this year has been striking. Just 1 month into the new year, and the number of cases is nearly 1/6 of last year's total, shining a spotlight on a controversial divide between parents who vaccinate their children and those who don't.
My older son had some difficulties with some of the vaccines. We'd had one shot that he'd had where he hadn't been able to walk for 2 days, and I was concerned that he could possibly develop autism.
Recently, comments by two top potential Republican candidates for president poured some fuel on the fire. While in support of vaccinations, both argue it's a decision for parents to make.
I've heard of many tragic cases of walking, talking, normal children who wound up with profound mental disorders after vaccines.
The parents need to have some measure of choice in things as well. So that's the balance that the government has to decide.
A spike in measles cases is troubling, as medical experts say there is a risk measles could reestablish itself in the United States.
Would it surprise you to learn that a professor in a university in Canada is anti-vaccine, teaching health and anti-vaccine? Melody Torcolacci is the professor at Queen's University. She has a presentation that includes, in part, the following we've learned. No scientific evidence exists showing vaccines are not contributing to increased incidence of chronic illness and disability in children. I don't think that you have to prove a negative in order to move forward scientifically. That's an unreasonable standard, isn't it? 2 times as many kids, she teaches, have chronic brain and immune system dysfunction today than in the 1970s, when half as many vaccines were given. Correlation doesn't prove causation, and I don't notice that a professor, who ought to know that, puts any effort into making that link. Joining me now, Juniper Russo, who is a woman who was anti-vaccine. Juniper, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Who's that with you there?
This is my son, Darwin.
How old is he?
He is 6 months old.
Okay, so you have another child.
Yes, sir.
Okay, a daughter. And when she was born, you were anti-vaccine, correct?
That's correct.
Why?
There were a lot of things that kind of came into play, but for me it was largely just an issue of worldview. I was really young and stupid, and I wanted to trust that the world was a safe place for kids, and that I could keep my child safe by, just feeding her healthy food and making sure she played outside and breastfeeding and all that stuff. I've learned my lessons since then, but at the time, I thought that she would be okay without vaccines. And I had also believed a lot of the hype that I had seen, especially online, that vaccines can cause autism and other chronic conditions.
So you did not vaccinate your daughter, and yet she's autistic.
Yeah, exactly. I did get her a few vaccines. Her pediatrician managed to kind of talk me into them a little bit at a time, but she wasn't fully vaccinated until she was 3 years old, at which point she was clearly autistic.
So you are convinced then that, certainly at least in your daughter's case, something else causes the autism?
Yeah, I am 100% certain that something else caused it. In particular, I think that it was genetic. Even though I'm not on the spectrum, I know there are a lot of people in my family who have autism-like symptoms, and I think that the genes just happened to come together in her in a way that, manifested as high-function autism.
Juniper, I was reading about you earlier, and I saw you using the term crunchy mommy. What does that mean?
Well, there's a kind of a subculture of, it's a reference to granola. Crunchy moms are natural moms. They're the ones who use cloth diapers, who co-sleep, breastfeed, buy organic, reuse their cloth bags, recycle, that sort of thing. And I do still, to a degree, identify myself as a crunchy mom in that, I value health and green living, but I don't subscribe to ideology over science anymore.
Well, in fact, so then are the other crunchy mommies mad at you?
I got a little bit of flack. Mostly, I think there are a lot of people who feel very insecure in their own decisions. They feel like they absolutely have to believe that they did the right thing by not vaccinating their children. And so when I provide evidence that vaccines are safe, excuse my cat right there, sorry.
That's all right.
When I provide evidence that vaccines are safe and effective, then I think that they feel insecure about it. And they, have at times reacted negatively.
You know, one of the pieces that I saw as I went through more of the presentation that this Queen's professor uses than what we showed on air here is a little kind of meme where they are making fun of people who believe in vaccines and then are upset because the non-vaccinated kids might endanger their own children. And they say, well, that doesn't connect. What they're missing there, and I wish a professor would be smart enough to know this, is you don't vaccinate children immediately. Newborn children need the sort of herd immunization in order to thrive in their very first part of their life.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm very well aware of that now. And that's why I'm really glad that my entire family has been vaccinated for flu and pertussis and measles. I really don't want my son to get sick before he's old enough to have the full course of vaccines to protect him.
All right. Would you go this far? Should vaccinations be mandatory?
For enrollment in public school, I think that without a specific medical exemption, I think they should be mandatory, yes.
I'm okay with a school saying, as my daughter's school says, you can't come to this school unless you have your vaccinations. That's different, though, because I could find another way to educate my daughter. That's different than saying, we're going to hold your daughter down and stick some needles in her, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I don't think that I would support that much government involvement in parents' decisions. I do think that because it affects other people, that it should be required before going to public schools. And I believe that privately owned businesses should be allowed to ban people who don't vaccinate. But excuse me again. No, I wouldn't support a law that would make children be vaccinated against their parents' consent, especially since I have a feeling that that would just encourage a lot of the people who believe in, a government conspiracy to hide the side effects of vaccines or to, force microchips into people and some of this other nonsense that I've heard.
We had at the beginning here, Juniper, a clip from Rand Paul saying that he believes that mental illness has been caused by vaccinations. How do you react to that?
I don't believe that at all. I think that there are a lot of reasons that that there's been an increase in the rates of several conditions, but I don't think that it has anything to do with vaccines. I think that there's a large amount of peer-reviewed scientific evidence that points to something else being the cause. As far as I know, there are no large-scale peer-reviewed very clearly scientifically documented cases of people contracting any condition from vaccines other than the ones that are, specifically listed and acknowledged as common side effects.
All right. I really appreciate this. And thanks to Darwin for his input and your daughter for a brief appearance.
Thank you. Again, I'm sorry about the chaos here.
That's fine. Thank you very much.